Welcome to your first adventure on your timeline. I'm going to walk you through what it means to subconscious time travel. I'm going to explain the history as well as the benefits, and then give you a little glimpse of the exercise that you're going to be using to be able to release limiting emotions, negative emotions, limiting beliefs, and limiting decisions. So, the first thing that you need to understand is the history. What is subconscious time travel? Subconscious time travel is my phrase for time techniques. Time techniques stands for time integration for maximum empowerment, and it dates back to 1890 when William James wrote in his theory, Principles of Psychology, that the unconscious mind stores memories in a linear fashion. That's why we call it subconscious time travel, and that you're going to be traveling among, you're going to be traveling above your timeline. Subconscious time travel takes into consideration three principles. One of them is psychology, there is metaphysics or the spiritual perspective of it, as well as quantum physics. And so, from the psychology perspective, and this is the reason why it is so effective when you bring these three things together, is that from the psychology perspective, is that you're going back to a root cause of a negative emotion, limiting belief, or limiting decision, and you're looking at it through adult eyes and you're reframing it. And so you go back with this understanding and seeing that situation or an event or the emotion that led to a decision, which, when you kept deciding that over and over again, became a limiting belief. And you get to reframe it, rewrite it, and change it. When you bring in the metaphysics part of it, it's really tied to the idea that there is only one true emotion, which is love. And that comes from the book of The Course of Miracles, where he speaks about how the truest emotion is love. We are born in love. There's that innocence, there's that love. And anything beyond that is just an illusion. And so negative emotions are an illusion. When we go back to the root cause and see that there's that love and what caused that, maybe anger, sadness, guilt, fear, etc., then we get to reframe that. And then the third part of it is the quantum physics part, which is saying that when you're on your timeline and you're looking at a different part of your timeline, but you're still in the present, there is a mirror atom that's happening that you actually get to manipulate and you get to change. That you're not going into the situation, you're just observing it and you're able to change it here in the here and now. You're able to change it in the past, which helps you in your present and in your future. So we're going to explore that. I also want to go and talk about the root causes. And if you remember the Disney or the Pixar film Inside Out, where she has these core memories, it is a lot like that. But her core memories are associated with joy. There's a lot of joy, happiness, and love. And unfortunately, that's not always the case with some of our core memories. When they are negative emotions, they actually become so much more in our awareness than the positive emotions like love, innocence, etc. Because as human beings, we do have a negative bias. And so I want you to think about it like this: as we're going back and we're looking at things, we're going to switch that core memory. You know, do you remember how sadness changed it to, by touching it, she changed it to sadness? Well, we're going to go back and we're going to reverse those things. And we're going to change them to joy, love, safety, abundance, etc. So we need to be thinking about it in that sense. Now, when we are doing this practice right now, where I'm going to take you above your timeline, just so you get familiar with your timeline, know that it can look however you want it to look like. Sometimes it looks like a actual line for someone. Maybe it's like a tightrope. Maybe it's a invisible line, but you just know the essence of it, that it's there. And it might look like a train track. Whatever it looks like to you is just perfect. Also, I bet if I were to ask you how you perceive time, most likely you're going to say that your past is in one direction and your future is in another direction. So if I were to ask you to point to your past, where is that? Is it to the left? Is it behind you? Where is that? And if I were to ask you to point to your future, if your past was on your left, does that mean your future's on the right? If your past was behind you, does that mean the future is your future is in front of you. I want you to be thinking about that as we take a little adventure on your timeline. Remember that we're using your imagination and visualization to create this change. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So that's that repetition part to creating change. The easier it gets to break up these. Think of it like a boulder that's like really hardened around our nervous system, our heart, our minds, and we start to break it up so that we have more opportunities. We have more ways of looking at things. So go ahead and close your eyes. And I want you to bring up your timeline. So visualize your timeline. And again, point to your past because we're going to first start by floating above your timeline, floating way above right now. Your body's safe here in the now. And you're going to float above with your imagination and visualize that you're way above this moment right now. So maybe you see the top of the home or building you're in, and you're floating above. You can still see that you're there in your seat, wherever you're at, but you're floating way, way, way above. Maybe you start to see the city that you're in, the town you're in, maybe the state, the province, maybe even your country, and you're far above, maybe in the universe. Now, when you look down to the present moment, you might see that it's just a little speck, but you know it's there. I want you to turn and face your past. We're going to travel 10 years into your past just so that you can get familiar with your timeline. So go ahead and float, float, float all the way back to your past 10 years ago. It may feel like you're just gliding. It might feel like you're floating on a cloud. However you perceive it is just perfect. And you know that you're safe as you're floating way back 10 years. Now that you're above 10 years in the past, you can see down at what's happening. You're just observing. You see, oh, wow, that's me in my past. Now I want you to turn and face the present and the future so that you're going all the way to the future. Maybe you go 10 years out into your future from today and you see the same thing. Now you're 10 years older, maybe 10 years wiser. You see yourself living life and you're like, oh, okay, there I am. Now turn around and face the present because we're going to come back to the present, float all the way back to the present, float down into your body, all the way into where you're currently at, and you can open your eyes. See, that's essentially what we're going to be doing. We're going to be floating back to your past for this exercise to release negative emotions, and we're going to be rewriting, revising, and reframing situations that first, maybe we start with the anger, negative emotion of anger, then negative emotion of sadness, and then we go on to other emotions like fear, guilt, and shame, and then maybe even frustration. What I recommend doing is that in your first sitting, whether you do the audio back to back or you do it all in one setting, is that I want you to release first anger and sadness. So again, you could do one session where you listen to the audio and you're releasing anger, take a little bit of a break, and then you release sadness, or if you'd like, you can release them together. But the idea is that you're going to be using the audio to go back in time to go to the root cause of this negative emotion of whatever you're releasing at that time and revise it. Now, because the unconscious mind uses symbols and images to communicate, when you go back to the root cause, you might find that it looks like it's not in your childhood. Maybe it looks like a past life, or maybe you are in a past generation where you're witnessing a parent, grandparent, great-grandparent, and they're the ones living this emotion, or maybe even limiting decision or limiting belief. That is perfectly fine. That's just the way your unconscious mind wants to communicate with you. You're going to observe it, you're going to extract lessons, and then you're going to reframe things. So for example, if there was a situation where there was anger, and that anger was caused because of a feeling of not feeling safe, and it made decisions like to maybe rebel, then what you're going to be embedding then is safety. It's going to be calm. It might be some love, definitely adding some love in there. And from that, you get to make different decisions. So listen to the audio, be open, and remember that after the audio, you've released a lot of emotions. So I want you to have some time alone to reflect, to maybe journal, drink lots of water, and just really be with yourself and create this safe space for you to process these emotions. You are going to feel a sense of relief. There might be some crying, but know that you're absolutely safe, that it's just your imagination, your visualization going to that time, that root cause, so that you're reframing it and you come back feeling more empowered. All right, so dive into that first audio and I will hear you, or you'll hear me in your earbuds.